I'm Harriet Hendel, and this is Pursuing Justice. We've spent the last 3 weeks focusing on wrongful conviction, highlighting an organization called Centurion Ministries, formed in 1983 by Jim McCloskey, who was our guest the last three podcasts. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Richard Miles, an exoneree who was helped by Centurion Ministries. Richard, I'm going to let you tell your story. Where and when did it begin?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm just honored to be a part of this opportunity. And my name is Richard Miles, and um, I'm 45 years old. And at the age of 19, I oftentimes say that that's the day that Richard Ray Miles Jr. died. I had just been dropped off from a friend in Oak Cliff. He drove me from Oak Cliff to North Dallas. Spent the day with my girlfriend, and he was going to visit his girlfriend later on that night, which was right around the corner from where I stayed. And as we got to her house first, I paid him $5, which was the initial payment that was asked before we left. And I remember getting out of the car, and I'm from Dallas, Texas. And so we were in North Dallas, and I walked up this street called University, and University connects to Lemon Avenue. And I'm walking down Lemon Avenue, and I probably stayed about 3 blocks from where I was initially let out of the car. Um, Walking down Lemon Avenue, I made a turn on Bluffview and called my friend James to tell him to unlock the door. It was probably about 1:30 in the morning by then. Crossed the street, and I noticed a police car was sitting kind of idle right there on the side of the road. Didn't pay any attention to it and walked on by. The next thing I heard was a helicopter, and a light shined on me, and all of a sudden, from nowhere, police cars came, and I heard the demands of get on the ground, get on the ground. And I'm laying down on the ground, and I'm telling the police officers who I was with that night, and they read me my Miranda rights, put me in a police car, and that was pretty much the last day that I saw freedom,
Mm.
and my life changed at that point in time. Um, I remember they took me to a Texaco, and when I got to the Texaco, they took me out of the car, and I'm looking around, and I see the police lights, and I see the ambulances, but nothing is really registering in my head because I hadn't did anything. And so somebody came up to me, and they put some stuff on my hands, and I later learned that was a gunshot residue test,
Mm-hmm.
but it wasn't told to me at that point in time. The next thing I know that I'm taken to the homicide division, and that's when I'm introduced to a detective, and the detective tells me that I am the suspect in a murder, an attempted murder, and he asked me where I had been that day. And this was back when cell phones had not really came out, and people knew people's phone numbers, and so I knew every phone number to the people that I was with that day. And so I gave the detective Ernest's number. That's the guy that drove me from Oak Cliff to North Dallas. His mom's number. That's where we were at. His girlfriend's number. My friend James, and my girlfriend, who initially stayed in the apartments where both stayed. The detective left out of the room. He stayed gone for probably about 4 hours. And he came back and said, Richard, your story checked out. All the alibis said you were with them. He said, but we have a witness that say they saw you kill one person and shoot another person. You're going to be arraigned for murder and attempted murder.
Mm.
And at the age of 19, I was ushered off to Lew Sterrett, which is the county jail, assessed a bond of $350,000. And my next call that I made was to my mom. Kind of sitting here thinking about it, it's certain things still kind of give me, give me the chills about it. But
I'm sure.
That's what happened. I remember calling my mom. I had just graduated from high school, at the age of 18.
Yeah.
And so I was pursuing college. I was going to go to TSTC in Waco to take up plastics engineering. I kind of love plastics engineering. And so I always thought that the next call that I made to my mom, would be a call letting her know that I'm on my way to college. But I'm calling her to tell her that I was arrested for murder and attempted murder.
Wow. And what kind of representation, legal help did you have at your disposal then?
Yes, ma'am. We had I had a court-appointed assistant attorney. Financially wise, we did not have the resources, so we resorted to the court-appointed system. My dad, God rest his soul, he was a minister, and he really believed that the system was fair. He believed that if you told the truth, the system will support you in the truth. And so I met my court-appointed attorney very early on. I stayed in the county jail about 17 months.
Oh, wow. That's a long
yes,
time.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So from May 15th all the way to October 1995, I was in the county jail. And I probably saw my court-appointed attorney about 3 times that whole stay. I was encouraged though by my court-appointed attorney because he was telling me all the evidence, and he said, Richard, they have 10 witnesses. 9 of them are saying that you are not the suspect. The description of the shooter does not fit you. The description is 6'2", 6'4". We see that you are 5'6", 5'8". The description is real dark complected and slim. You're brown skin and kind of stubby. So physically, I didn't fit the description. All of your alibis are going to come testify. He said, but I don't know what this one witness. It was one witness that said that they saw me. And so I was very encouraged during those 17 months from what my attorney was telling me. Jury trial came in August of 1995. I remember I had just turned 20. My mom and dad and my brothers and sisters were all in the courtroom, and I even remember the victims' families that was across the aisle, and that's still an interesting day because after a 7-day jury trial and all of the evidence was brought out, I was given a total of 60 years in the Texas Department of Corrections. I was given 40 years for murder and 20 years for the attempted murder. And at that moment, you can hear a sigh of relief from the victim's family side because they felt justice was served, but you could feel the weight of an injustice on my family side because they knew I was innocent. And so justice really was more of a word at that point to me. Some of the things that kind of came out in jury trial that Centurion, and we can talk about later, was able to dissect was the gun ballistic test, gunshot residue test that was done on my hands. It came back positive in the palm of my right hand, but negative anywhere else. So positive in my right hand, but negative anywhere else. It was brought out in jury trial that with the amount of shell casings that was shot that night, it should have been an overwhelming amount of gunshot residue, anything on my clothing, more than in the palm of my hand. And the fact that I'm left-handed was also a factor. But I think it was a coincidence because all of the witnesses testified that the shooter shot with his right hand. So the fact that this gunshot residue test only came back positive in the palm of my right hand was just very interesting. And I wrestled with that for the duration of my time. How could this test come back positive? And I had never shot a gun a day in my life.
it's just remarkable, and we hear this again and again, that the evidence didn't match what really happened. That you're just describing this opposing evidence, and it should have exonerated you. But why didn't it, Richard? What do you think happened that you were convicted anyway, even though the evidence was not strong?
I think it boils down to society's trust and belief in the systems.
Mm-hmm.
We have, society has a trust and belief in the systems in which we should. But at the same time, I think that there should be standards that we want systems to reach. Prime example, in trial, reasonable doubt should be the factor that allows a jury to determine if a person should be found guilty or innocent. And when I look at my case, I can't point my finger at the court-appointed attorney or the prosecutor or the arresting officers. I think that everybody had a hand to play all the way up to the jurors. And so to your question, I think that's what happened. The jurors felt because this evidence was presented, it was true. And they cast all thoughts of reasonable doubt to the side because they trusted the people more than they trusted the facts.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Now, I absolutely want to leave time to talk about, what you did after you got out of prison. Centurion stepped in and exonerated you in 2012 after serving 15 years. And it only took them 2 years, which is record time, right, to overturn your case. But while you were inside serving those long 15 years, what was that like for you, and how did you use your time?
Yeah, so walking into, I did all of my time on Cofield Unit, and Cofield is one of the biggest prisons in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Over 5,000 men on this one unit. And very early on, I remember walking on Cofield, this big brick and glass structure, and they escort you to the barber shop, and I meet a guy in the barber shop, and he's cutting hair. His name is Ben Spencer. And Ben, the conversation to everybody was, where are you from and how much time do you have? And I told him, I said, man, I'm from Dallas. My name is Richard. I said, man, I got 60 years for a crime I didn't commit. After everything was over with, Ben told me about Centurion. He said, man, my name is... He said, man, I'm innocent. He said, these people have been working on my case for the past 10 years. He said, man, they are the only ones that do non-DNA cases. And so in 1997, I sat down and wrote Centurion a letter. And they wrote me back, and to your point, the letter was very generic, and they basically said it would be about 10 years before they would actually be able to get on my case. However, I had just been given 60 years. And so what happened was Ben really taught me how to maneuver through the system. He told me, man, if you're going to fight your case, if your direct appeal get denied, then you have to start studying the legal work because you have to file your own writ of habeas corpus 1107. And so I found myself, outside of working and going to college when I could in prison, I found myself in the law library.
Mm-hmm.